When I was younger, I absolutely hated getting haircuts. The barbershop was the last place I wanted to go to. Every time I'd go to the barbershop, I'd always end up going there crying and always leave crying. I'd go with a head full of hair and I'd leave with no hair. And that was terrible, I'd go to school and I'd get made fun of for my hair because I had no hair. I'd get the absolute worst haircuts. But at one point, I thought to myself that I grew to an age where, I couldn't be crying about getting a haircut, and how I needed a better haircut. So what I did was I went to the barbershop with my dad, and he usually picks out my haircut, and it always ends up being terrible. But this time, I gave the barber my instructions, and it still went pretty bad, and I left crying, like always, and it didn't help. But today, I'm going to show you 3 ways in which you can find a new barber, and matter of fact, a decent one, not like mine. So the first is you gotta get recommendations from your friends. So what you wanna do is when you get a recommendation from your friend, you wanna ask how long the barber has been cutting hair, and you wanna ask your friend for how long has he been cutting his hair there for, and how you can reach out to the barber if you wanna make an appointment, or if you want his social media to reach out to him as well, or to see his haircuts, or how he showcases his haircuts or whatever. And yeah, if you have a friend that cuts his hair with some barber and a group of his other friends cut his hair there, and it's basically, if it's more than 3 people and they all recommend you, or your friend recommends you, and you know that everyone goes to that barber, that's a good sign. So that's one recommendation you could have down. So always keep in mind, if a group of people go to this certain barber, then that's a good sign that he cuts hair pretty well. So you want to get at least 3 recommendations, or good recommendations, as a matter of fact, and you want to have them each ordered out from best to worst, I guess. So now that you have your moving on to the second step, is you want to pick out your choice. So your 3 choices from your 3, you have to pick from your 3 choices. So what you want to do is make sure that he has a social media account. A lot of barbers nowadays showcase their work, and if they weren't to showcase their work, then that means they'd be pretty bad, or they don't have social media. But most of the time, it's a competition against barbers. Haircuts are that's a big thing now. I think it's grown over the past years. And, it's always nice to have a good haircut. And recently, a lot of barbers have been making a lot of money off of this. So, everyone wants to showcase their work. So make sure that from your 3 picks, that each of them have somewhere to showcase their work. And from those 3 picks, you have to pick out the one that cuts hair that suits your style, or your style of hair. You could be walking into a barbershop where they cut only, or to a barber where they only cut thick hair, or a barber where they only cut thin hair. For example, me, I walked into my friend's barbershop, and I went to his barber, and he usually only cuts people with thick hair, and I have very thin hair. And when I walked out of there, I looked terrible. I had no hair on my head, because everyone's hair is different. And you always want to pick out your best option. You want to see how they cut hair. And for another tip of advice is you have to make sure that the price is reasonable too, because in my opinion, $15 to $30 is a decent range. Anything more than that, I feel like it's too much. I started off paying $15 for my haircut, and actually, as a matter of fact, those $15 that I'd pay for a haircut were the best haircuts I've ever had in my life. So if you're lucky enough to find a barber that keeps it cheap and is really good, then you're set. But nowadays it's pretty hard to find that. But always make sure that the price is reasonable. There are people that charge $80 for a haircut, and it's really not worth it if you cut your hair every week. And yeah, and another reason why they charge so much is because they do the towel and the face mask, but you can always ask to remove that, and maybe they'll, you know, take it off and make it cheaper. But in most cases they wouldn't, because they want to make the most money they can. And yeah, you know, from those three, you want to pick out whichever one suits you and what price range suits you, as well as your style of hair. And now moving on to the final tip is, now that you've picked your barber, you want to go there with confidence and specific instructions. Be ready to, you know, have specific instructions on how you want to cut your hair. The very first time you cut your hair with a new barber, you know, it's not always going to be great, but it's not going to be bad if you have the proper instructions, or like, you know, the way to tell them how you want your hair. Preferably, you should take a picture of how you want your haircut, and you'll most likely be good. But in most cases, you know, a lot of people go in and they sit down, the barber starts cutting their hair, and then they ask him how they want it, and the barber just starts free roaming and does his hair how he thinks the guy wants it, not how the guy wants it. And you know, the guy always just sits down and just is too shy to say anything about it, pays whatever money he has to pay, and then leaves with a haircut that he did not want. And in most cases, that's what happens to a lot of people with their first haircut. That's what happened to me with my first, with some of my haircuts. You know, I was too shy to say anything. You know, I had to pay like, what, 25 bucks for a haircut that I did not want, that the barber gave me, just because I was too shy to say anything. But remember, at the end of the day, it's always your hair that's being cut. You know, he's offering this service to you, so he should cut your hair the way you want it. So don't be afraid to speak up and tell him that he's doing something wrong, or that he shouldn't be doing this, or that you don't like this. You know, at the end of the day, it's your hair. So today we've gone over 3 ways in which you could cut hair, in which you could find a new barber that could cut your hair. So you got to find the recommendations, you have to pick your best choice, and you have to go with confidence and instructions. And you know, it's not, as you can see, it's not that hard to find a new barber. You know, you just have to be confident, you know, follow these rules, and you'll be set most of the time. And you won't end up walking out of the barbershop with tears like me, or with a horrible haircut. You know, follow these 3 rules and you'll be set.